he's perfectionist, as almost everyone we've discussed would fall into that personality character.
There's never been another like Jack Nicholson. A grin that could charm the devil himself, eyes that glimmer with genius, and just a touch of madness, and a soul that's never learned how to bite its tongue. At 88, with the Hollywood hills fading quietly behind him, Jack isn't playing the game anymore. He's speaking freely, and he's naming names. 6 actors, 6 unforgettable personalities who, he says, turned his time on set into pure torment. Some are icons, some are rivals, but all of them left a mark that Jack Nicholson has never forgotten. For decades, the man was untouchable, Hollywood's wildest talent and most unpredictable mind. From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to The Shining, Chinatown to Batman, Jack didn't just appear in great films, he defined them. He didn't follow the rules, he rewrote them. Every smirk, every stare, every outburst became part of film history itself. But even legends have their limits. Even gods have people they can't stand. And in what's rumored to be his most brutally honest reflection yet, Jack has opened up about the 6 actors he swears made life on set unbearable. People he describes as toxic, manipulative, self-indulgent, and, in some cases, downright dangerous to the art of storytelling. So who made the list? What really happened behind the cameras of Hollywood's greatest masterpieces? And what do Jack's confessions reveal about the true cost of brilliance and the burden of truth? Before we dive into those names, let's rewind. To understand why these people got under his skin, you have to understand the man himself, the code he's lived by since the day he first walked onto his soundstage. Jack Nicholson has always been more than an actor. He's a force of nature, magnetic, intense, unapologetically devoted to the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. Born in Neptune City, New Jersey, Jack had to create himself from scratch. By the time he reached Hollywood in the 1950s, he was already a rebel, raw, restless, and allergic to pretense. He trained under the legendary acting coach Sanford Meisner, who taught a single philosophy that changed Jack's life. Acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. For Jack, that wasn't just acting advice. It became a way of life. Truth, stripped, uncomfortable, and unpolished, became his obsession. When he burst onto the scene in 1969's Easy Rider, Jack wasn't just playing a part. He was setting fire to an era of Hollywood fakery. He became the face of a generation that refused to pretend, a man whose rawness and rebellion mirrored the times. From that moment on, he carried one rule into every set: no lies, no masks, no phoniness. And when someone broke that code, when they faked the work, manipulated the energy, or played politics instead of the truth, Jack didn't forget. Jack Nicholson wasn't just an actor. He was a force of nature, magnetic, intense, unapologetically devoted to the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. Directors like Milos Forman and Stanley Kubrick didn't just admire him, they feared and respected the intensity he brought to every role. Nicholson didn't act, he became. He slipped into his characters like a second skin, hijacking their thoughts, their madness, their very heartbeat. On the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he vanished so completely into the role of Randall McMurphy that he refused to speak to the director for weeks. It wasn't ego, it was immersion. He wanted every flicker of rebellion, every spark of chaos to feel real. And when he stepped into The Shining, he took that obsession to another level. To understand Jack Torrance's unraveling mind, Nicholson didn't just read the script. He wrote pages of his own deranged ramblings. Those weren't lines. They were fragments of a man surrendering himself to the abyss. This wasn't method acting for the sake of art school bragging rights. This was a sacred vow, a creed. Show up ready, tell the truth, bring danger to the room. Leave your ego at the door or don't bother showing up at all. For Nicholson, the work was holy ground, and anyone who broke that code was committing sacrilege. And when someone did, Jack never forgot. The first name on his blacklist hurt more than any other, because it belonged to the man he once worshipped, the god of modern acting, his hero turned heartbreak, Marlon Brando. To Jack, Brando was untouchable, the North Star for every actor who came after A Street Named Desire and On the Waterfront. Brando had rewritten the rules, breathing raw honesty into a craft that used to be all polish and posture. He was the dream until Jack got the chance to live it. In 1976, the dream came true. The Missouri Breaks. 2 giants, 1 screen, directed by Arthur Penn. The expectations were high sky, but reality hit harder than a barroom punch. The Brando that showed up wasn't the rebel genius Nicholson had built altars to in his mind. He was gone, a ghost wearing Brando's face. Jack arrived every morning with his lines sharp and his spirit sharper. But Brando, he didn't even bother learning his dialogue. Cue cards were taped to lamps, props, even other actors' foreheads. If there was a banana nearby, Brando would probably read his lines off it. Jack once joked, or maybe half confessed, the man who invented modern acting couldn't be bothered to remember his own lines. Genius, sure, but lazy genius? That's just another word for fraud. And Brando's antics didn't stop there. He showed up late, out of shape, and delivered performances so bizarre they seemed like inside jokes no one else was in on. One day he was speaking in a strange Irish accent. Another, he showed up in dresses and bonnets. It was chaos disguised as creativity. To Jack, that wasn't brilliance, it was betrayal. He once said, "We came to find truth in the dirt, and he came to amuse himself." It broke him a little, watching the man he'd idolized turn into a caricature of his own legend. The film bombed, and though Jack always spoke with respect for Brando's early work, he made a quiet vow. Never again. The lesson was cruel, but unforgettable. Never meet your heroes, especially when they've stopped being heroic. The second name on that list cuts differently. Not with disappointment, but with regret. Because this wasn't just a clash of egos, it was emotional warfare disguised as filmmaking. Her name was Shelley Duvall. Their battlefield, the Overlook Hotel. The haunted, echoing maze where Stanley Kubrick's The Shining pushed everyone to the edge. Technically, this wasn't a feud between 2 actors. It was more like a shared psychological experiment gone too far. The tormentor? None other than Stanley Kubrick, the perfectionist mastermind whose obsession with detail pushed his cast to the edge of their sanity. Kubrick wasn't content with good enough. He demanded hundreds of takes for a single scene, dissecting every breath, every blink, every tremor, until his actors were stripped raw. The production dragged on for over a year of mental warfare. But Jack Nicholson, ever the craftsman, found a way to adapt. He didn't fight the madness, he used it. Every ounce of frustration, every sleepless night, he poured into Jack Torrance, the unraveling man trapped inside the haunted Overlook Hotel. Nicholson knew Kubrick's game. He recognized the manipulation, the control, and he weaponized it, turning torment into art. But Shelley Duvall, though, was a different kind of artist. Her strength lay in her openness, in her trembling vulnerability. And under Kubrick's relentless gaze, that very gift became her undoing. Day after day, she was pushed to emotional exhaustion. Her tears were real. Her shaking hands, her gasps, all painfully authentic. Years later, Nicholson admitted that working opposite Duvall could be draining. Her unpredictability made it difficult to find balance in a scene. Quote, "She brought the storm with her every morning," once he reflected. One take would be brilliant, the next completely different. It was impossible to find rhythm. For Nicholson, acting was like a dance. Both partners needed to feel the same music. But on Kubrick's set, Shelley was hearing her own haunting melody. Jack's frustration wasn't with her as a person, but with the chaos that surrounded her. He craved stability, a professional anchor to hold the madness in place. Instead, every day felt like walking into a hurricane. Quote, "We were all under pressure," Nicholson said. "Stanley was a general leading a war, and we were soldiers in the trench." And yet, time softened his stance. Decades later, Nicholson spoke with compassion about what Duvall endured. Quote, "I respect her," he said quietly. "What Stanley did to her was unconscionable. No one should have to go through that. That film, it's a masterpiece, but it nearly broke us both. I just wish it hadn't been quite so brutal." When The Shining finally wrapped, both Nicholson and Duvall walked away changed. Two brilliant performances born from psychological wreckage. The next story on Nicholson's list wasn't about trauma. It was about collision, not of generations, but of philosophies. Tom Cruise. The year was 1992, and together they created cinematic lightning in A Few Good Men. Nicholson as the unflinching Colonel Nathan Jessup, Cruise as the fiery young lawyer Daniel Kaffee. Their courtroom showdown birthed one of the most quoted lines in movie history.
"You can't handle the truth!"
But off camera, the chemistry cooled. Nicholson reportedly admired Cruise's discipline, but not his approach. To Jack, Cruise's intensity felt engineered, too polished, too calculated. Quote, "You could see the machinery turning behind his eyes. Click, there's the smile. It's perfect, but it's empty." Jack, trained in the Meissner technique, believed in raw, unfiltered truth, the kind that's messy, unpredictable, alive. Cruise's performance, while dazzling, struck him as mechanical. Quote, "He acted like he wanted to learn from me," Nicholson reportedly told a friend. Always asking questions, always watching, but it felt rehearsed, like he was playing the part of eager young actors studying the master. It wasn't real. For Jack, acting wasn't about control. It was about surrender to the chaos, the uncertainty, the danger of not knowing what your scene partner would do next. That's where the truth lived. That's where the magic was born. To Jack, Cruise represented a new Hollywood. Precise, controlled, image-driven. Nicholson came from an older school, the one where the best performances left scars. And in that difference, their brief creative friction became something more than rivalry. It was a passing of the torch from one generation's truth to another's illusion. He always said Tom Cruise was the exact opposite of what he valued in a scene partner. To Jack, Cruise was a machine, a perfectionist, who came to set with every blink, every breath, and every line reading rehearsed within an inch of its life. It wasn't acting, Jack thought. It was performance by calculation. Polished, yes, but lifeless. Take the famous courtroom scene everyone still quotes today. Jack admitted, "People love it, and that's fine. We got the job done. But what you're really watching is me trying to break through a wall. I was throwing emotional fire at Cruise, desperate to get something raw and spontaneous back. But all he got," he said, was, quote, "what the kid practiced in the mirror." He compared it to the difference between a live concert and a studio recording. Both can sound great, but one bleeds with soul, while the other just hits the right notes. Quote, "I like the sweat, the noise, the feedback. That's what makes a scene feel alive." And though the movie earned him yet another Oscar nomination, he made one thing clear afterward. He'd never work with Cruise again. Not out of hate, but because their creative worlds were galaxies apart. He respected Cruise's work ethic, but he couldn't find the soul behind the precision. Then came the feud that hit far closer to home. One that wasn't just about art, but pride.